Hello, Blue Jays fans. Welcome back to Jays Center. Ethan and Brandon here, back to discuss everything going on with the Jays. Obviously, the Blue Jays lost Game 7 of the World Series. We've discussed that in another video, but we wanted to reflect on the season as a whole because besides a couple of home runs in Game 7 of the World Series on behalf of the Dodgers, this was about as magical of a season as you could imagine for Toronto. I mean, really, considering that they were last place in the division a year ago, coming now 2 outs away from winning the World Series, it's pretty hard to imagine it going better other than obviously getting those last 2 outs. So Ethan, I wanted to pass it over to you. What were your favorite moments from this season? Any storylines that you were really happy with? Just general sort of reflections on how the Blue Jays played in 2025.
Sure. I mean, I'll start off with the fact that, we were the number one slot this season, beating out the Yankees and the Red Sox. I mean, the Red Sox didn't have an amazing season, but, to go up against the Yankees, who were, World Series contenders just last year, I think is a huge improvement. I mean, forget that we were in the World Series this year. The fact that we had such an improvement from 2024, I think is huge, which I'll give a big shout out to that. I mean, making the World Series is no, easy feat either, but, we talked about that in another video already. If we're still on the topic of the World Series, I do want to focus on Trey Savage for a second for having
Mhm.
an incredible World Series and postseason. Just an incredible player at such a young age. I'm really excited to see what happens in 2026 with him. I think those are like my two real big highlights. I think something else that, we spoke about during the trade deadline and everything else in between was, again, being an Orioles fan, the Blue Jays got a lot of Orioles players, Santander, Sir Anthony Dominguez, and both of them have been huge assets to the Blue Jays, especially Sir Anthony Dominguez, who was a huge reliever
Mhm.
during the postseason. So I'm really happy with how the trades have gone for the Blue Jays because, again, every trade is risky during the trade deadline in the MLB season. Every acquisition is really risky, but I think the Blue Jays played it really safe and they have really reaped the benefits of what they sowed. What are you feeling? What's your favorite parts here from this past season?
Yeah, I think it's hard to remember back that this was actually part of this season. But the Blue Jays extended Vladimir Guerrero Jr. to a $500 million contract, but they extended him. I mean, and obviously he proved throughout this season and especially in the postseason. I mean, he's one of the 5, 10 best players in baseball right now. So, I mean, to have him under contract effectively through the rest of his career. Is a really promising sign. I mean, this guy's going to go, if things continue the way they are, he's going to go down in the Blue Jays record books as one of the greatest players, if not the single greatest player in franchise history. And to consider that he's only now entering his prime, yeah, there's a lot of, exciting production left from him. Beyond that, obviously, like you said, Trey is Savage breaking out in the way that he did. Ernie Clement, setting the MLB postseason record for hits. I mean, we talked about it that this is such a deep lineup, and even though, the team stands to potentially lose like Bo Bichette in free agency this offseason, a lot of the guys, a lot of the important hitters are still around for at least a little bit, a little longer. George Springer's, in contract for next year at least. Obviously Alejandro Kirk's around. Again, a lot of these fundamental pieces of the lineup are still here. And though I think the Blue Jays definitely need to overhaul their rotation a little bit. Obviously, Max Scherzer's a free agent. Shane Bieber might be a free agent. There's definitely a lot of questions around the age of some of the other guys. This Blue Jays team, like, I don't think this is going to be a one-hit wonder sort of situation. This wasn't like a team that went all in and pushed all their chips into the middle. This is still there's still some young pieces on this team, and obviously if they can, re-sign Bichette, you're going to keep most of this core together and potentially set yourself up for a few more runs at a championship in the next few years.
I also just kind of want to focus on our wins from the past season. I mean, away games, we won 40 games and lost 41 games, but still, that's a pretty good track record. Wins at home back in Toronto, 54 wins, 27 losses. Compared to every other team, the Yankees, the Red Sox, the Rays, we're not even going to talk about the Orioles because it was a disaster this season. 54 wins to 27 losses, that is an insane ratio. So again, we really popped off this year. And again, I completely agree with you that part of this depends on who we're going to re-sign next season and who kind of bites the dust. But if we can keep most of our lineup, I think that number can only improve.
Yeah, no, for sure. And again, it's worth keeping in mind. Obviously, after you come 2 outs from winning the World Series, you want to keep the band together. But it's worth keeping in mind that the Blue Jays are going to have quite a bit of money to potentially spend in free agency. Chris Bassett's going to become a free agent, Max Scherzer, maybe Shane Bieber, again, Bichette, Sir Anthony Dominguez. I mean, there's a lot of money that's set to come off the books. Now, a lot of that might go back to re-signing guys. Obviously, maybe the Blue Jays try to dump some salary that's looking not so great. But regardless of how they do it, this is a Blue Jays team that still can improve. I mean, obviously, the offseason hasn't even started yet. And the fact that you have Trey Savage and Jeff Hoffman and Vladimir Guerrero Jr., all these fundamental pillars under contract going forward, it's just a sign that like, hey, like the core is here. We can keep building on this. Obviously, if you get like a healthier season from Santander next year, that alone is a huge addition to the lineup. So it's just, again, obviously the World Series, you were so close. It's really hard to be like, man, like not play the what if game of like, man, what if there was just one extra play that went the Blue Jays way or something. But in terms of how this season went, I mean, this is one of the great turnarounds, the great year over year turnarounds in baseball history. I mean, again, they were last place in the division last year. They were the best team in the AL this year and came 2 outs from beating what a lot of people considered going into the season the best roster in baseball history. Obviously, the Dodgers didn't play that well this season, but I mean, that is a loaded roster that they have. And so it's a testament to how good this team really is, especially when all the pieces are clicking that, hey, like Toronto can compete with the best teams in baseball. They are one of the best teams in baseball. So I'm excited for the offseason. I'm excited for next year. Obviously, I'm trying to look forward because I don't want to look back right now. But it's just I'm excited for what's to come, and obviously just all the positives to take away from this year. If you can focus on them, it really was an impressive season for the Blue Jays.
Absolutely. I think something that I kind of want to end on here, because again, we're trying to end on a positive note. And I say this for every team we cover here in the diamond centric umbrella. I always go back to our farm system and our young guys that haven't even made up to the major leagues yet. I mean, we've
Mhm.
seen it so many times with the Blue Jays, with really any MLB team. But every season, once spring training comes around, people kind of sleep on spring training a bit because again, it doesn't really count towards it. People say it counts towards stuff, but in my opinion, it doesn't. It's not really. It's practice at the end of the day. But you really get to see these young guys kind of come out of their cocoons, and you really see who's been training their entire lives in high school and college. And these are where veteran players get to train the young guys. So that's where I'm really excited for. I always kind of press like, look, you don't know who's going to be the next MVP. You don't know who's going to be the next Vladimir Guerrero Jr. You don't know who's going to be the next George Springer. So that's what I'm really looking, forward to in 2026. Before we end this, I'm going to ask you the same question. What are you looking forward to in 2026?
Yeah, I think, I mean, you brought up, these prospects. Obviously, the Blue Jays farm system isn't great right now. Obviously, they traded, top 100 prospect for Shane Bieber. Trey Savage is still technically a prospect, by the way, because he got so much of his work in the postseason, which does not count towards rookie status. So, funny enough, he'll technically be a rookie next year, which is hard to believe. But yeah, I mean, I think for me, going into next year, I'm going to be focused on the pitching staff. Again, the Blue Jays pieced together everything this year, but this is not an elite pitching. So we saw it in the postseason. This is not an elite pitching staff. This is a team that's carried by their offense. But Kevin Gausman's getting older. He'll be 35 on opening day. Jose Barrios is going to turn 32 next season. Obviously Trey Savage is the young gun, but there's talent. Obviously Jake Bloss is still around, but there needs to be another infusion of pitching talent, especially since Shane Bieber's probably going to leave. Max Scherzer might retire. We don't know yet. There needs to be, I'm not saying a blockbuster signing. They don't need to sign Dylan Cease. They don't necessarily need to trade for like Tariq Skubal, but there needs to be a genuine investment into this pitching staff because I think the offense just simply carried too much of the load throughout this entire season. Obviously, again, it nearly worked. It's just you can't necessarily rely on the offense being this efficient again next year, especially in the postseason. So I'd love to see whether it's again the young guys like Trey Savage and Jake Bloss really emerging, as frontline pitchers, whether it's a big free agent signing or as you've mentioned, the Blue Jays have been pretty aggressive in trades recently. However it happens, I'd love to see just what the pitching staff looks like come opening day and what there is to expect for the rest of the season. But as always, we'll pass the question off to you guys. How do you feel about this season? Obviously, trying to slightly ignore what happened at the end of Game 7 of the World Series, but how do you feel about this season overall? What are you most looking forward to? And what was your favorite moment of 2025? It was a objectively, it was a great season for the Blue Jays. As always, we'll be reading and trying to respond to every single comment.